So let's talk about my favorite intrusion detection tool, Snort. Yeah, because it's like the pig. It sniffs up all the good smells. It sniffs up all the packets. It's software-based real-time network intrusion detection system. It is not intrusion prevention. Intrusion prevention is inline. So if source and destination are talking, in order for it to be intrusion prevention, I'd have to say, I'll take that packet, let me look at it, it's approved, and let me hand it off. Intrusion detection says, oh, look at those packets going by. Those are bad packets. Hey, the network administrator, these are bad those were bad packets. See, that's the problem. So network intrusion detection, I think, is a relevant tool. I think it's a very great tool. Marty's done a really good job. Marty Roche actually was one of the originators of Snort. And by the way, Snort has just been bought by Cisco, so it's going to be incorporated into their tool set. Instead of using Network Analyzer, you'll probably be using Snort in the future to help you with your analysis and intrusion detection. It detects threats based on pattern matching. What we say is, this is evil. That pattern has to be in our pattern buffer. It has to be loaded and programmed into the Snort device. You can write your own patterns if you want to, but what's really elegant about Snort is you can reach out to the Snort user community, and they've written packet descriptors of evilness that are out there. There are two different actions that you can take when it comes to evilness in your list. You can say, hey, I want to reset that if it's a TCP three-way handshake kind of communication, or I want to capture that and then let's set off another capture log. So you could say, when I see this kind of event, I need to turn up my listening devices for more information. And so you can create those triggers. Normally what happens is we capture all this data here. That data is rolled up, and at intervals it's offered up to the security team, the network security team, and they do review analysis on that, and they say these are bad, these are good, and let's now react to this particular threat. Very rarely do we use Snort for do we have a robust enough environment where we can use Snort in a really real-time kind of situation. It's pretty rare at this point. You create these new rules and these new patterns, and you build them in. You have to reach out to the user community. You have to know what the latest and greatest attacks are. That takes a level of sophistication that most organizations aren't willing to do, except for like the top, I'll say the top 100,000 organizations in the world are willing to do that. But regular 200-300 people in an organization, those small organizations, they're not willing to do any of this activity. They usually outsource it and say, we've got a firewall and we're kind of done there. Remember, it records all of the network traffic that you tune it to do. Switching gears, let's talk about firewalls. Firewall is a combination of both hardware and software, a combination of not just one device, but many devices that are going to separate different security domains. Okay, well, what's a security domain? Well, we say the internet is out there, that's everybody. So when it comes in here and it's interacting with our people, those are two separate security domains. You may have further security domains. You may say, okay, internal to our organization, that's them and this is us. And we'll say external traffic, we'll have firewalling there. When we get inside of our organization, we've got the accounting department over there and the research and development department over there. Maybe we want to create two security domains there and separate them with a firewall. It is a filtering mechanism that is programmed to stop inappropriate activity between security domains. What is inappropriate activity between security domains? That's based upon how you've tuned it in those firewalls. You can have firewalls all the way down to a security domain of one machine, literally putting a firewall on one host. Now, let's talk about honeypots. A honeypot looks really, really delicious to an attacker. It says, oh, look, I can get in here and I can attack this machine and I can compromise it and control it. What's really going on is outside of that, you're watching, you've created an experiment where you've created something that is valuable to somebody else and you want them to attack and you want to watch how they attack. So this is kind of live forensics, if you will. Now, here's the thing. Most enterprises have got a lot of other things that they should be doing before they set up honeypots. They should be doing good change control, good patch management, good incident handling, good forensics at a host level before they get to honeypots. Also, if you set up something that is delicious and yummy for those evil bears that are on the outside, they may find out that you're watching them. And then they get really pissed off. And that's when they bring all their friends to come down and kick your network's butt. So you want to be really careful about this. You want to really have your security act together. Now, set all that stuff aside for a second. What you're saying to me is that the attacks that are perpetrated against your network are so unique that nobody else has this information. You're saying that all of the security firms and antivirus firms and those huge firewalling and intrusion detection firms, they've never seen this kind of attack before, and you need to study this attack so that you can build defenses. I call BS on that. I just don't think that that's happening unless you're a super secret government organization or you've got intellectual property that the entire planet wants. I find that difficult to believe. But okay, let's set all that aside and say you need a honeypot and you're special, or the organization that you're working for is special. It could be a honey net. It could be a collection of servers. Remember, it's an architecture that is highly controlled and monitored all of the activity. You're going to have to be paying very close attention to this. I don't think that that's the case, but okay. And it is possible in there. Now let's switch gears and talk about network attacks. You should have a clear understanding about IP spoofing, router attacks, eavesdropping, denial of service, man-in-the-middle, and sniffing. These should be at your fingertips. If you're doing network forensics, you should understand these attacks so that you can see the result of these attacks. That's one of the things that we're going to have to deal with here, and it's also something that we're going to have to deal with in the future when we talk about web attacks. We're going to say that there is cross-site scripting or there is a man-in-the-middle attack. We may not be seeing that attack, but what we see is the result of that attack. So you have to study that. How you would study that, by the way, in most cases, I believe, is you would set up your own forensics lab in your own machines, and you do the attacks against yourself, and then record those events and say, this is what it should look like. When we investigate network attacks, we have to kind of zoom back out and say, okay, what are the goals here? Well, the goals of investigations for networks are ensure that all application logs and evidence are preserved, understand how the intruder got into the system, discover why the intruder chose the targeted machines. I don't know that you can test for intent, but maybe you can. Obtain information that may narrow the list of suspects. In other words, the whole planet is out there, the whole internet is, but who's really coming after us? Document the damage that is caused by those intruders, and then decide whether you want to go to law enforcement. Now, I was actually working on penetration testing for an organization that actually was live compromised and the attacker was on their machines. And they came to me and they said, first, get this guy out of here. Second, after you get him out of here, give us all the information that we can go and prosecute him. And my answer back to them was, okay, we can get him out of here, but it's not going to be just boot him out. What we do is we slowly creep away. So don't think that you can just lock them out, because what they've probably done, if they've been there for a while, is they've probably attacked other machines within your network and they're all compromised. So this isn't going to be just flip a switch and they're gone. It's not like kicking a person out. They've got different tentacles into your network. Second off, collecting this information after the fact, because they did not have any logging set up on the machines. They did not have any of that data. Since they didn't have that data, they really couldn't go to a court of law. I said, well, we can turn on listening devices now and we can capture this information, but it's not going to be as valuable to prosecuting them. And then lastly, this is an intent to cause harm, and you have to prove where you lost money so that you can get the attacker to give you that money back. But that means that they had to get the money. That means that they actually have to have some money in the bank account. And in this case, we kind of narrowed the suspects list and realized that they probably didn't have a lot of money. So the decision to go to law enforcement and prosecute, maybe the money that you spend in doing all that legal action would be better spent in beefing up your defenses and making yourself stronger so that you can protect yourself in the future. Let's switch gears and talk about DNS for a second. Take a look at my slide here. So lower left-hand corner, that's the client that actually wants to resolve an IP address. They will go upstream to their caching server. So what they'll say is, hey, what's my configured DNS server? That caching server would go out to the internet and eventually through the iterative process would get to a secondary domain name server that would resolve that address for them. They would then take that caching server information and give it back to the client stub resolver, and then that client would connect to the web server. So let's look at the path here. We start off, take a look at my pointer. We start off here and say, I want to go to www.stuff.com. This server here doesn't know that information, so it says, I'm going to go out onto the internet through an iterative request to the root, to the .com, and then eventually to the stuff.com servers. And what I will do is I'll go down to the secondary zone and I'll request www.stuff.com. www is one server, that web server sitting right here. That information is passed back, the caching server sends it to the client, and the client says, I know the IP address of the web server that I want to go to, and I'll reach across and get that. That's not the entire DNS story, because back here what happens is when the DNS administrators program the DNS resolution for this web server right here, what they do is they program it into to the primary. They update the data in the zone file, and then that is replicated from the primary down to the secondary. So this secondary has a read-only copy of the information that it's passing out. Let's look at the attacks that are possible here. So this is the path, possible path, all the way to the client. It's unlikely that it's a one-to-one relationship where the primary talks to the client resolver. So let's look at some of the attacks here. I could corrupt that data there, could actually attack that primary server and get that data there. There are zone transfers. I could do unauthorized updates and dynamic updates. I could impersonate the master in the zone transfer. I could cache pollute or DNS poison here. I could also do cache impersonation and attack the client there. The real problem here with DNS is that there's not just one vulnerability. We talk about DNS cache poisoning, but that could be done anywhere along the resolution path from the DNS server. That's DNS vulnerabilities. I challenge you to go and look up the DNS vulnerabilities that are going on now with different services that are out there and different servers that are running DNS.